What if the land you bought today became the place you actually retire to someday? That's exactly what we're digging into on today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Land Buyer's Guide. I'm your host, Scott Thomas, owner of landparker.com, where we help everyday people find affordable rural land with owner financing that actually fits their budget. Really glad you're here today because this topic, using rural land as a long-term retirement strategy, is one I genuinely love talking about. Let's get into it. So here's something I notice a lot. People spend years and years planning for retirement. They've got their 401k, maybe a savings account. They're thinking about Social Security. And that's all smart. But a lot of folks never think about land as part of that picture. And honestly, it can be one of the most flexible, most affordable pieces of a retirement plan that exists. Rural land is typically way more affordable than developed real estate. You're not paying for a house, you're not paying for a neighborhood, you're buying raw land, and the entry price reflects that, which means you can get in earlier, hold it longer, and let it appreciate over time. What starts as a modest investment can grow into something really substantial by the time you're ready to retire. And the flexibility piece, that's huge. You can develop it slowly, you can lease it out, you can hold it and do nothing with it for a few years. You don't have that kind of freedom with most other investments. Now, before you go shopping for land, it really does help to sit down and think about the lifestyle you're actually working toward, because your vision shapes everything. The location you choose, the size of the property, the features you need. And people's visions are all over the place, which is totally fine. Some folks want a small homestead where they're growing their own food and raising a few animals. Some want an off-grid cabin where they can completely unplug. Others just want wide open space, somewhere peaceful to spend their retirement years without a neighbor in sight. There's no wrong answer, but getting specific about what you want makes it a whole lot easier to find the right piece of land. A few good questions to ask yourself: do you want to grow food or raise animals? Or are you more just looking to enjoy the outdoors and nature? Are you comfortable with off-grid living, or would you need access to utilities? How far are you willing to be from a town, a hospital, your family? Is this going to be a full-time retirement home eventually, or more of a seasonal getaway? And do you plan to build something on it down the road, or keep it raw for now? Getting honest with yourself about those answers really narrows things down. Okay, so let's say you've got a general vision. Now you're actually looking at properties. The thing is, not all rural land is created equal, especially when you're thinking about living on it someday. There are a few things worth paying close attention to. Water is probably the biggest one. You've got to know whether the land has a well, whether there's a natural water source nearby, or whether drilling a well is even feasible. Water rights also vary a lot depending on what state you're in, so that's worth looking into early. If growing your own food is part of the dream, soil quality matters. A basic soil test can tell you a lot about what that land can actually support. Some soils need a good amount of work before they're productive, and that's just worth knowing up front. Road access is another thing people sometimes overlook. Does the property have legal access from a public road? Or does it rely on an easement across someone else's land? And what are those roads like in different seasons? Some rural roads get pretty rough in winter or after heavy rain. Worth knowing before you're committed. Zoning and deed restrictions. This one comes up a lot. Before you fall in love with a piece of land, it's a good idea to check with the county and find out what you're actually allowed to do on it. Some properties have restrictions on building a permanent residence, keeping livestock, or running a business. It's just a quick check that can save you a lot of headaches. And if you're interested in going off-grid, solar, wind, that kind of thing, take a look at the land's potential for that. If you'd rather stay connected to the grid, find out how far the nearest utility lines are, because that distance affects your connection costs more than most people expect. Here's what a lot of people don't realize about buying land early. You don't have to do everything at once. One of the best parts of buying rural land 10 or 15 years before retirement is that you can improve it gradually. You've got time. Maybe you clear some brush in year one. A few years later, you put in a well and a septic system while you still have a full income coming in. Maybe eventually you build a small cabin that could grow into a full-time home. You plant some fruit trees so they're already producing by the time you move in. Spreading those improvements out over time makes the whole thing financially manageable. And it means by the time you're actually ready to retire, the land is ready too, or pretty close to it. Now, the land doesn't have to just sit there doing nothing while you're still working either. There are some pretty practical ways to generate income from rural land before retirement. If the land is suitable for it, you could lease it to a local farmer or rancher for grazing or crop production. If there's mature timber on the property, a sustainable harvest can bring in meaningful income. Hunting leases are really popular in a lot of rural areas, very reliable seasonal income. And if you build even a small cabin on the property, short-term rentals through platforms like Airbnb or HipCamp can bring in some decent revenue. That income can help cover property taxes, fund your improvements, or just give your retirement savings a little extra padding. A couple of practical tips as you're moving through this process. If you can, visit the property at different times of year. Seasonal changes tell you a lot about flooding, about road conditions, about what the land actually looks and feels like day to day. It's worth the trip. Having a land survey done before you close is a really good idea so you know exactly what you're buying and where the boundaries are. Talk to neighbors and locals if you get the chance. They know the area's history better than any listing description ever will. Think about proximity to healthcare too. It might not feel urgent right now, but for retirement planning, it's worth factoring in. And make sure your budget accounts for ongoing costs, property taxes, insurance, maintenance. Those things add up over time and they're easy to forget when you're focused on the purchase price. And honestly, beyond all the practical stuff, there's something really meaningful about owning land. It's a place that belongs to you, a place where you can slow down, breathe some cleaner air, watch a sunrise from your porch, live more on your own terms. For a lot of people, that kind of self-sufficiency and peace is exactly what they're looking for in retirement. And it's hard to put a price tag on that. The earlier you start thinking about rural land as part of your retirement picture, the more time you have to find the right property, improve it gradually, and let that investment mature. You don't need to have every detail figured out on day one. You just need a sense of direction and a willingness to do a little homework. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. If you're thinking about rural land as a long-term investment or a future retirement property, come check us out at landparker.com. We've got discounted rural properties available across the country, and we offer affordable owner financing, sometimes as low as $100 down and $100 a month. No bank needed, no credit hoops to jump through, just land you can actually afford. Head over to landparker.com, browse what's available, and if you have questions, we're always happy to help. Thanks for listening to the Land Buyer's Guide, and we'll see you on the next one.